In this video, I'm going to be disassembling the PlayStation 5. Before we start, please go ahead and smash that like button so it lets YouTube know that we're doing the right thing. This video is brought to you by FastTech Pro Toolkit, which is a toolkit we're going to be using to disassemble this PS5. Not only does this kit have all the bits you need to disassemble your PS5, but it can also disassemble any other electronic device. Our kit even has a bit you can open up McDonald's toys with. The link for that is in the description box, and you can use the coupon code YouTube for a discount. Let's get started. This is the PS5 Disc Edition disassembly video. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the stand if you do have it hooked up. It's a flathead screw that you need to remove. It's included in our FastTech Pro Toolkit, which we sell on our website, and the link's gonna be in the description box. You can use the coupon code YouTube for a discount. Not only does this kit have bits that you need to disassemble the PS5, but all other kinds of electronics. Once the screw comes out, we're gonna take the stand off. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take the top cover off. It's very easy to remove. Just give it a whack like that and it comes off. There's clips that hold it in, so it slides off. Then we're gonna flip the console over and do the same thing on the other side. Like that, and it comes off. So it looks like we got access to the fan from this side. So these are Torx T9H screws that you need to remove these screws. We're gonna use our FastTech Pro Toolkit, and we're gonna get the T9H bit, which is right here. We're gonna need this bit to disassemble the PS5. And our screwdriver. Again, guys, links in the description box. And you can use the coupon code YouTube for a discount. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna remove these Torx T9H security screws. This right here is the SSD storage slot, which allows you to put an M.2 SSD and upgrade the storage in your PS5. There's a Phillips screw that holds it in, which is also in our FastTech Pro Toolkit. So we're going to attach that bit to our screwdriver. Remove that screw. It's a lot longer this time around. It's not short like it used to be. We're going to remove that bay. And that's the M.2 SSD slot. You put your M.2 SSD in there. At the time I'm making this video in February 2021, this feature is not available yet, but it will be in the future. So in the future, you're going to be putting in, if you're watching this later on, if you're watching this in 2022 or late 2021, you can put an SSD drive in here. I'm sure I'll be doing a video about that in the future. We're gonna remove this sticker that hides a bunch of connectors down here. We're gonna try to do it slowly so it doesn't get bent or damaged. It's like a cover, basically it's kind of like a sticker. It's hiding these connectors in here. We're gonna disconnect these connectors. Leave the cable in there. This one's for the fan. You're gonna pinch the connector from the sides, not from the yellow part, not from the yellow part here, but from the connector, the white part, not the off-white part. You're gonna grab the connector. You can use pliers or your fingers. Grab the white part of the connector, wiggle, and pull, like that. Be patient with this. You don't want to rip out these connectors. I get a lot of you guys commenting that you ripped out your connector from your PS4. That's because you weren't gentle or you weren't pulling from the right place. We're going to use the T9H that is included in our FastTech Pro Toolkit. Again, links in the description. I'm going to remove these 4 screws. They're also Torx T9H screws. that hold the fan in. We're gonna remove this piece. At this point, we're gonna remove this piece. It's just a plastic trim piece that clips in. And then we're gonna lift the fan out. It's a Eject. It's the same company that made fans for the PS4s. One of them. That's a pretty big fan. Again, this is a completely brand new system, so it's clean. Has a whistle. There's 2 more Torx T9H screws. There's a silver one here. At this point, we're going to remove this sticker. This is what Sony considers to be the warranty sticker in the United States due to an FTC ruling. This is no longer considered a warranty sticker. If you bypass this without the proper method of heating it up with a heat gun or a hair dryer, if you don't have a heat gun, this is going to show a bunch of XOs and triangles and the square symbol, which will let Sony know that this sticker's been bypassed. So right now, as you can see, it's completely matte black. But if I open it without heating this, then it's gonna let them know that this seal is void. So what you wanna do again is use a heat gun, heat this seal, or use a hair dryer if you don't have a heat gun. And then you can gently peel it off to expose the last T9H screw that's in there. All right, so now that I've heated it up for a little bit, I should be able to take this off without voiding sticker. I gotta do it really slow. You want to take your time with this. There. So that's how you take off a warranty seal without voiding it and letting Sony know that you did, so your warranty still stays intact, again, if you're outside the US. And there's the Torx T9H screw right there that we're gonna remove. And now this part's free. I can just pull it off and that part of the frame should come off. All right, at this point, we're gonna get the disk drive out. There's a ribbon cable here that we're gonna have to remove. You're gonna push down on this retaining clip and then gently pull out the cable. Push down and it should come out like that. I'm gonna push it down all the way. You're gonna see this piece go back. You don't wanna pull it out, otherwise you're gonna damage the cable. You don't wanna pull it out without pushing down on this, otherwise the cable is going to be damaged. We're going to lift the disk drive out, and that's the Blu-ray disk drive on the PS5. That's what it looks like, and it does have a dedicated logic board, so that means that this motherboard will only work with this disk drive because of this logic board in here, the green circuit board that you see, and it's paired to the motherboard. So that makes PS5 a little bit less repairable, and that's on the PS4 Slim or PS4 Pro, because those did not have a dedicated logic board. The first PS4 did, and so does this. So I'm guessing the next PS5, the PS5 Slim, whenever that does come out, which it eventually will, it's not gonna have a dedicated logic board. They do this in the early models. So this is our PS5 disk drive. On the outside, I can tell that it's slightly different shape. but it's got a logic board in it, just like with the first gen PS4s. So this does have a dedicated disk drive logic board, which means that if something is to happen at this disk drive, like if I toss this disk drive in the trash can, I'm never going to be able to get my PS5 to read discs again, because this logic board is paired to the motherboard in my PS5. So that, from a repairability perspective, is not a good thing. And I can't just replace the disk drive without having a matching logic board. So let's take it apart. Also, before I start, this is the screw. This is the hole where you can put a Phillips screwdriver in to remove a disc. If it's in there, all you do is put your screwdriver in and rotate anti-clockwise. If you got a disc stuck in there and your PS4 won't turn on, I'm gonna be doing a video on that later in the future. All right, we're gonna take apart the disk drive by removing the screws. They're small black Phillips screws. There's two at the front here. And one on the side here. One more screw up here. Tape on the side, which we're gonna have to cut through. Now we're going to remove these 4 Phillips screws on the top. Now we should be able to separate the top of the disk drive. All right. That's the top frame. That's what it looks like. All right, looks like the logic board model number is UHN 010. For those that are interested, I'm gonna take the logic board out of the disk drive. This is a component you want to be very careful with. You should treat it just like you treat your main board, with care and respect, because if this thing breaks, you're screwed. Your PS5 is never going to read discs again. All right, very carefully we're going to lift the logic board out. This is an interesting design where there's a disk drive and then the logic board is screwed into the bottom, but it hangs once you remove it. That's interesting. Interesting design. We're going to remove the logic board completely. There's a ribbon cable here. We're gonna pull this one out. There's another cable here, which I imagine operates the top, because it's got 2 wires, and that's what those switches usually are. I'm gonna remove this. There's another ribbon cable here. I'm gonna pull that out. Up top here, we have a ribbon cable, but it's got a connector. That's got a clip. We're gonna lift it like that, pull the cable out, and now we got the logic board and the disk drive separated. So that's what the logic board looks like. One of these is probably the controller chip, model UHN 010, for those who are curious about that. This is what the back looks like. So that's our disk drive. It looks a lot similar to older PS4 disk drives. This is the arm that when you put a disk in, this moves in this direction, and then it hits a switch, and then the PS4 knows that there's a disk in the system and starts to accept the disk. These are rollers that would break quite frequently on previous PS4 models. These would come misaligned. If you put 2 discs in there or jam maybe a foreign object that's not supposed to be here, these rollers would come out, and then your PS4 wouldn't accept discs. I've done a couple of videos on that for PS4, so I imagine that is also going to be an issue with these. I'm going to take the disk drive apart to show you guys what it looks like on the inside. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 Phillips screws here. This is an interesting shape for a disk drive. Instead of a square or a rectangle like the older PS models, they went with this shape. I suppose probably to save space. But anyways, we're gonna take these Phillips screws out that hold the top of the disk drive in. All right, we're gonna lift it up like that. All right, now we're in the disk drive. All right, so as you can see here, these are the rollers that would come misaligned on older units. That's the laser right there. So if in the future, after a couple of years, if your PS5 is struggling to read games, you need to clean this laser. If that doesn't work, you either have a bad logic board or your laser is completely bad and you need to change the laser. And I see that it's going to be easy to replace the whole deck because there's 3 screws that hold the deck in and the deck's going to come out. All right, let's remove the deck. There's 4 screws that hold it in. There's 1 ribbon cable that's still connected at the front. All right. We're gonna remove this ribbon cable and then pull up like that. And now we got the laser deck out of the disk drive. This is what the laser deck looks like. I believe this is a Fastech exclusive. I haven't seen anyone in the world that's disassembled the disk drive down to the laser deck. And that's what the laser deck is. This is what the laser looks like. It's a model KEM 497 AAA. That's the model number of the laser deck. And the deck itself, it's plastic instead of metal. Usually the whole cradle is metal, but this time they went with a plastic deck, which is an interesting choice. I imagine probably to save weight, and it's probably better for heat. We're gonna remove these 2 antenna cables. I'm guessing these are for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. There's tape that holds these cables in. Rest in peace to this piece of tape. There's more antenna cables on this side. We're gonna disconnect this ribbon cable here. Disconnect this ribbon cable here at the front. Now we're gonna remove the several Torx T9H screws. This black one here is taller and it goes in here, right over here. This is where the tall black one goes. We're gonna pull down on this retention clip. That side is push, this side is pull. And the cable's gonna come out like that. There's some screws on this side that we need to remove. They're also Torx T9H screws. It's a tall one, and there are two. Right. I'm gonna flip it back. That screw fell out. Lift that, get that out of the way. All right, at this point, we're gonna be able to get this plate free. You might have to use a little bit of force because there's these thermal pads and some thermal paste that attaches it to the motherboard. And that's the motherboard right there. This is what I was talking about right here. That's the heatsink clamp. That's what holds the heatsink onto the board. There's two Phillips screws that hold the heatsink in. We're gonna remove this cable at the front. I'm gonna push this connector downwards. We're gonna push it down and then pull out the connector like that. Now we're gonna undo these screws that hold the heatsink onto the APU. Put these to the side. That's a very hefty heatsink clamp. Doesn't move at all. It's completely stiff, which I think is a good thing. Very high quality piece. Feels like the highest quality heatsink clamp I've ever felt in a game console. And we're gonna remove this piece. This whole design is very similar to previous PlayStations. You wanna be very careful when working in this area. These components are At this point, we're gonna lift the motherboard out along with the heatsink. This is the power supply right here. I'm gonna get to that in a bit. I'm gonna put this to the side for now. So that's the heatsink. It's pretty massive. That's the heatsink right there. As you can see, it's really, really massive. The biggest heatsink I've ever seen in a game console. Maybe even in a PC application. Even GPU heatsinks are not that big usually. Maybe when you look at surface area overall, yeah, or maybe not. This thing is massive. So obviously there was a lot of emphasis on cooling with the PS5. We gotta remove this Phillips screw, which is the screw for the SSD, but also holds the board in. So now our motherboard should be free. I don't want to flex the board too much. There you go. Now it's come apart. We're gonna look at the motherboard, and it's a PS5 model EDM010. It says right here. So that's the liquid metal application right there. That's the APU chip, and that's the heatsink. And there's special precautions that have to be taken when applying liquid metal. As you can see, there's this extra protection on the APU chip, and that's so that none of that liquid metal gets on any of the components on the APU chip, because if it does, it could short out the board. I saw a very famous YouTuber who has a lot more subscribers than I do disassemble one of these, and you replace the liquid metal with thermal paste. And I don't know what the point of that was. So we're not gonna do anything like that. We're gonna leave it, and we're gonna look at the motherboard. I'm gonna put the heatsink away. And right away I notice the HDMI encoder chip. It's the same model as the PS4 Slim and PS4 Pro. So I know that this is going to be a component that fails on these. If you ever have an HDMI output issue, if it's not coming onto your TV, it's either the port, which I think is a revised design, so it doesn't look that like it's going to break. The HDMI port looks a lot more durable than earlier PS4 models. But I do believe that this chip will fail because it used to frequently fail for PS4 Slim and PS4 Pro systems. So I do believe that this is going to be a weak point for the PS5. If we flip the board over, I believe this is our RAM. This is the RAM, and it's linked directly to the APU chip. I think this might be our SSD, our built-in solid state storage. And there's more on the other side. Also notice the network chip. It looks like it's the same model from PS4 CUH 1200 series. The PS4 Slims and the PS4 Pros had the same network chip that I'm looking at here. It's a model J20H100. So I believe this is going to be another weak point on the PS5 because these used to fail quite frequently. And what would happen is that the controller wouldn't connect to your console anymore. It would only connect in safe mode where the PS would talk to the controller through a wired connection. But in the regular dashboard, your controller would never connect, even with a cable. And that was because of this chip right here. And I believe that this is going to be, again, another weak point for the PS5. These chips did fail in the past, and I don't see why they would not fail on the PS5. Now, let's look at some of the other components. All right, so here we have the bottom end of the case. This piece right here, the LED light and the power button assembly. It comes right off. It's one piece, it'll come off easily. That's the power button right there. That's the eject button. And that's the ribbon cable connector for that. This looks like a connector for the front USB-C port and the front USB 3.1 port. This is a controller for the LED lights, I believe. This piece right here, it's an EDL010. This I believe is the Wi-Fi / network / Bluetooth antenna. Your power button never fails. This is what you got to replace. All right, let's look at the power supply here. So it seems like if the power supply does fail, which these components do fail quite frequently, you would have to take everything out of the system to get to the power supply. And these are definitely a weak point in the system because I know from the past, from earlier PlayStation models and electronics in general, when you pack a power supply like this in so close to the motherboard and so close to other components that generate heat, and the power supply is also generating heat, that's not a good recipe for cooling. So I believe that these will fail, and when they do, you'd have to take everything apart to get to the power supply. The screws, the Phillips screws that hold the power supply in, but we're gonna need a slightly bigger Phillips driver here. So we're gonna get that from our kit. And now the power supply is out. And there's another antenna at the front. So the antenna plugs on to the power supply. See, this is my first time doing this, so I'm learning as I go. The power supply model, that's an ADP 400DR power supply for the PS5, first gen. We're gonna remove this antenna by pushing down on this plastic piece right here. And then we're just gonna lift the antenna out. With the antenna out of the PS5, that would be the last part that we can remove out of the system. So that concludes our PS5 disassembly video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. Please go ahead and smash that like button if you like this video, if it helped you out. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and if you've subscribed already, please click the bell next to the subscribe button. Also, check out my vlog channel in which I travel the world and record my adventures, and the link for that is going to be in the description box. This is Young Tech God from Fast Tech, signing out, and I'll see you in the next one.